Hey gang, Scott here. I haven't done one of these videos in a while, a live edit, live being in air quotes. I'm not live streaming, but what I am doing is I'm taking a photo from my library. I've done no work on it whatsoever. I just turn on record, start working through it, and you get to see my process end to end. And you'll see me doing the things I normally do, which is thinking about the story of the photo, how can I emphasize that story, and some of the creative choices that you make along the way. So let's get started with this photo here. Well, starting with the image assessment, what is the story I'm trying to tell here? What is the photo all about? It's about this fall foliage, these beautiful autumn tones here. Yeah, the photo is kind of dark. That sky is overpowering the brightness on it. Some other things I notice is the left-hand side of the image is kind of empty. That's not helping my story. I need to be focused over here with good bunch of trees in the foreground, this nice little midground. The sky is nice, but the sky is going to be a secondary player. I can get this type of sky, even the misty hills in a lot of places. I can't get this type of foliage everywhere, and certainly not year-round. I'm also now glancing up at my histogram. I got a whole lot of shadows, a good collection of highlights, and not a whole lot in the middle. This is a naturally contrasty scene. We'll see how flat it gets when we start to do the initial global processing and compensate accordingly, because I do want to have that nice the nice spread of contrast there. I'm going to resist clicking my HDR button. I've just updated to an HDR capable display, but some of my screen capture software, and for many of you looking at this on YouTube, you may not be able to see some of the HDR things. I'd expect a little more highlights in the sky for this type of photo, because that's really where the extra dynamic range comes in. But we're going to be able to do quite a bit because there really isn't any harsh clipping out there. So let's hit auto. And I'm going to switch this to landscape. Those are my two things I'm almost doing immediately. And click on the J key. All right, little clipping up in that portion of the sky. Good for me, because that's in the upper left. And I said I need to do some cropping here, because I don't want the left side of this photo. So that's my next step, is just to get the crop right. And very first thing, I'm just going to pull this in like really far. Let's hit the L key, zoom down here, and really focus in on what's most important. Where I'm playing around as I'm going up and down like this, I'm watching these tree branches down here. It's either I need enough of them to say, hey, there are tree trunks here, or nothing at all. And to me, this is better. I don't want as much sky in the photo. And yeah, I could do a different aspect ratio crop or something like that. But this is what I'm going to go for. One thing that Lightroom's added too is I'm going to zoom in, because we can zoom in on our crop now, and I can really get that fine-tuned cropping on the edges right where I want it. So I have good exits on the trees, and I don't have any, like maybe right there for that piece. And then I can do my border patrol, which I've talked about many times with more precision. And then I'll still nudge that up a little bit farther. There we go. I think I like the crop. We'll turn off the lights out mode, so we're back to our controls. One more thing in the very area of tone, I want that contrast to come back. I'll push it far, bring it back, something like that. As I'm pushing that contrast, I'm watching the overall photo, and what I'm thinking about are localized adjustments. I did a video on this maybe just a week or two ago about using your globals to give you hints about what you might want to do with the locals. As I'm pushing this contrast around, I'm watching the hills in the background, I'm watching the trees in the foreground, and there's certain shadows that I do want to emphasize in the foreground, and I like the notion what it's giving me about pulling in some of the haze in the background. So I'll go easy on contrast for the globals and come back to it later. Let's now go down to clarity and texture. Clarity, a little bit globally. I do like the pop that it's giving on some of the kind of these washed out type. They're not quite ambers. Let me get my toolbar open. I don't think I'm zooming in all the way. There we go. They're not quite goldens or amber tones, but they're that lighter yellow. That's a nice push from clarity, and texture will give me a little bit of that as well. Let's see how dehaze does globally. It should focus on the background. It's creeping into the foreground and midground too much for my taste. So I'm going to leave dehaze alone. That's, again, one of those hints, doing something globally, figuring out what that means for localized adjustments. A couple other things. Tone curve. let's find, and maybe we can do something globally with tone. So what I'm searching around for is I'm going to get a deep shadow, click once. I want to protect that. I don't really want anything there to change. And then bright highlights. We saw some things up in the bright clouds. Click that. I don't really want that to change either. And then what do I have in the midgrounds? Actually, at this point, I can probably just look at my histogram that's in the curve. And we'll say maybe around here. Nudge that down a little bit. I'm using Shift and click to do this. One of the nice techniques to help control what you're doing with the curve. Before, after. That's pretty good. I still feel like the foreground is a little dim. I want to do some raising of that. Certainly the background. I am thinking about the fall color too. And that's something I can probably do globally. Let's take a look at doing that globally, because for the most part, I've got 3, maybe 4 predominant colors. I've got yellow, orange, a bit of blue in the background, and then maybe some red. So let's start with something like with the orange areas, and we'll take saturation. I'll push it far. You can see what happens. Pull it back a little bit. Just giving that a little bit extra. Let's find something in the yellows out here. Same idea. I can push that saturation just a little bit up. These are subtle changes. I do not know how well they'll come through on YouTube. You can see what's getting impacted if I were to really push it. I just want a little bit on that. I don't want a lot. I just want a little bit. And let's see about do we have anything in the this deeper ruddy color. If I shift that a little more toward red, push it far, you can see this is a crazy red. We don't want that. A little bit. Just nudge that a little toward red, a little toward saturation. Before, after. Honestly, that even feels a little heavy-handed. I think it's the yellows that are the most, because there's too much yellow there going on. Let's zero that out. That feels better to me. So I think, even the reds, I got to tone that back just a little bit. I'm already thinking, wow, I should have done this with a local adjustment because it has an amount slider, and I could have just dialed the amount in. That would have been an easier approach. But I am here. Let me just go finish this off and nudge that back. So this is a super soft adjustment, but it is a nice one. All right. I think I'm good with my globals. Before those changes, after, doing pretty good. Other thoughts that are going through my head now is with localized adjustments, I want to have a little more separation of foreground, midground, background. Definitely want to tame down that sky, bring in, have that sky a little darker, retreat. And something like that foreground, midground, background, I'm thinking about like this area of open field here, this lower left corner. That's probably going to be some level of burning just to darken those down, to give those levels of separation. Let's keep on going. All right, up into our masking tools, the very first thing is going to be the sky. Let's take care of the sky. Dehaze is going to be the first thing we'll take a look at, and we'll push that dehaze. That's good. Not a ton. I don't want to do this. That's just, way too crazy. Although, actually, as I do that, I can quickly check for dust spots now because I forgot to do something about that. Looks like there's a bird or something way up there. I'll go deal with that toward the very end. I skipped over that. I forgot to do that. That happens. And a little nudge on the exposure, and I will play with temperature just a touch. Cool it down. I think I'll leave temperature alone. So a little touch on the sky. Just have that retreat. Okay. Now, for the major segments of the photo, I've got this big collection of autumn trees in the foreground. I've got this midground tree is kind of running through. This line, this stream of trees there that I want to get separated. So let's do the big ones in the foreground. And for that, I'll just use a radial. I just need something to cover kind of this major area of the photo. Let's rotate it. Let's stick it down in this corner here. We'll stretch it out. I don't need the feather to be as narrow. Something, whoops, there we go. Something like that. First thing is I want to see it. I need to brighten it up a little bit. Color, we did play with color already. Let's try saturating a little bit. That's a nice touch. Let's do like that. And perhaps if I do clarity. That should give a little more localized contrast. So I'm getting not only the detail pop and texture for a little more detail, but localized contrast before and after. Recall when I was doing that global contrast adjustment, one of the things I was noting was how it's behaving on the trees in the foreground. So revisiting that here, and instead of using contrast straight up, using clarity to get, kind of a double whammy. I get the detail, which is going to draw the viewer's attention, as well as the boost in contrast. So that's a good adjustment. Let's now focus on the patches of field. And I shouldn't have patches, they're fields. I think object selection will be a good choice for that. So I'll use the box mode here and try to get basically that field object. Nice, good. Brush just to feather that out a little bit. We'll lower the flow. Actually, let's lower the flow will be fine. Lower the flow so I can just kind of taper that off out into that area there. What do I want to do here? I want to darken it. So just darkening it. That's good. We're doing a burn here, basically, right? Before, after. Now that I have that one there, I can continue with the brush. I'll leave the flow right where it is, and I'll just kind of do, handcrafted burning down here in this corner, right? Because I don't need this corner to grab attention. I just want there to be a little more separation. Okay, I'm gonna do a little backtracking here, because now as I've darkened this part's getting a little bit lost. Our previous mask where we brightened up this foreground area, let's add to that mask with a brush. I'll leave the flow at 75-ish and just kind of carry it out into these things I want accented, these things, and maybe a little bit in the tree line there. So now I have, I'm pointing, I'm not painting. Nice boost on a little bit of exposure, a little bit of clarity to bring up those tree lines there. And then I've darkened these either sides here. So when we look at those two adjustments, raising the foreground, darkening the midground, and then we've got our background. And then finally, I think our last bit is going to really just finish it off with a vignette. But we'll do it in I guess my style, my fashion here. What I want is, let's zoom out a little bit. I still want to make sure the eye gets pushed down into this foreground, because that's where I want my viewer to look. So I'll bias things here. This is where I want you to look. And now everything that's red, because I've inverted this, that's where the vignette's going to be. Okay, let's do the darkening. Darken, darken, darken. But now I'll subtract with a linear gradient from this side of the photo, because I don't want to darken the foreground. I want the vignette to kind of look like this. You can see where the red is. That's where I'm darkening as a result of this. So that vignette action before and after, it's like really the left side of the photo, the upper parts of the photo, but pushing down. And we can even do a counterpoint to that, another radial gradient. And this one will be very soft and angled. And this one will have a nice tiny, I see I'm brightening it up. I'll pull that back. Just a very soft brightening accent. So it's like an inner light. There we go. Okay, let's zoom back to full screen and push that over there so we can see what those locals did before and after. I think it's a much nicer photo. I might even consider doing, I guess I can do the experiment, even a little further darkening on the top. So let's do one more potential vignette. I'll pre-stage this with a 0.3 and darken down. Let's see, does that help me or not before and after? I think it does. I think I'll keep that. And this is where I was talking before about that amount slider, where I don't have to go fiddle with all the individual adjustments. I can play around with, maybe I only want, 74% of a negative 0.34. You can go do the math. I'll watch the photo and work visually to see how that's going to play out. And maybe I'll push that up a little bit and not darken as much on my tree line there. There we go. Before and after. All right, let's take a look at that again. Before all those locals and then after. And then really the big thing is from where we started from to where we are. Yeah, I like this photo a lot more now having done the processing on it. Hope you followed along, enjoyed watching me work. Got questions, go ahead and drop them below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.